Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Simona. I'm a product manager on Static Web Apps, and I'm here with my wonderful and good friend and colleague, Anthony.
Hey everybody, good to see you all. So today we're going to talk about full stack .NET with Blazor WebAssembly and Azure Static Web Apps. And yeah, let's dive right into it. So Blazor WebAssembly is a front-end framework, just like React or Angular. It has things like client-side routing and data binding and components, all the things you expect from these kinds of frameworks. And the main difference from these other frameworks, of course, is that you can build Blazor WebAssembly apps with C# and Razor. And it runs in the browser in a .NET runtime that's compiled to WebAssembly. And the runtime executes your .NET DLLs directly in the browser. So that's super cool. So for .NET developers, what this means is that you can use C# for the front end and your back end of your app. And you can even share code between the front end and back end, and as well as other parts of your application. And sometimes you need to interact with things that require JavaScript. And Blazor WebAssembly also allows you to do that. You can call out to your JavaScript code from C#, and you can also have your JavaScript code call C# as well. I think I said that right. And and recently, there's been a popular approach for running web apps called the Jamstack. What is it, Simona?
Well, Anthony, the Jamstack is one of the coolest things that I've come across over the past few years or so. And it's really, it gives a name to a set of widely used architectural patterns when building for the modern web. And it stands for, wait for it, JavaScript, APIs, and markup.
So since it's Blazor and not JavaScript, does that make it the BAM stack?
It absolutely makes it the BAM stack. You heard it here first, and it's definitely going to be a thing. So Blazor and the BAM stack stands for Blazor, APIs, and markup. And B is Blazor for your runtime. And we also have APIs, so reusable APIs. We have strict decoupling in the Jamstack or in the BAM stack. We have strict decoupling between the front end and our back end services. And this is so that it gives us more autonomy when it comes to our deployment and development practices and strategies. And then with the markup, the Jamstack or the BAM stack approach is to pre-build all of our markup upfront and serve it directly to the browser from a CDN or a point of presence that's close to your users. And there's plenty of advantages to using the BAM stack. And I'll focus on a few that are actually worth mentioning. One of the things that's most important is that we usually get much better performance because our assets are pre-built and then delivered from a CDN that's close to users. They will automatically experience much better experience and much better performance, especially when it comes to, let's say, traffic surges. We know that our application won't crash, or it will be our users will experience our application in a reliable way. And we also get simplified developer experience. The typical workflow that you would normally expect when using Jamstack or BAMstack platforms is that you will, as a developer, you will push your code to your source control, and then the platform will automatically build and deploy your application, globally distribute your static sites to or static assets to a location close to users. And because we're only shipping static assets, we don't have to figure out how to configure things like your server or your caching strategies, or even think about database and scaling your database there based on incoming workload. And one of the awesome things as well that we get with the BAMstack community is really the fact that there's a very active community that creates content and creates a lot of best practices and tools that are very useful to get started and build awesome applications.
Nice. I don't know how I'm going to keep a straight face every time we say the word BAMstack. But I'll try. So let's talk about how to host a Blazor WebAssembly app. There's really two ways to do it. The first is what we're showing on the screen right now, where you kind of run an ASP.NET server. And because Blazor WebAssembly is just a bunch of static files like HTML and CSS and a bunch of .NET DLLs, ASP.NET can serve that really well. And if the app needs to run any backend logic, it can call APIs that are also hosted in the same ASP.NET server. The advantage of this is that you just have one thing to deploy, but there's some downsides as well. And one is that because the ASP.NET app is serving both the front end and the APIs, you can't scale these things independently and actually kind of host them in a way that are optimal for each one. So another approach would be to host them separately. And so you can host your front end on a server that's designed to serve static files. And you can also distribute these files around the world using a CDN. So they're super close to your users, like Simona was talking about earlier. And for the backend APIs, you can run them as serverless functions that can scale on demand. So whether your app is not doing anything at all, and in which case will be scaled down to 0, or that a bunch of people are hammering these APIs, it's just going to scale out gracefully with no problems at all. And this is basically the Jamstack or BAM stack, I guess, approach. And Static Web Apps is built for this.
And in case you haven't heard about static web apps, you definitely should give it a try. It is one of the newer services in the family of Azure App Services, and it's a service that enables you to build and deploy globally distributed full stack applications. You can extend your front end with backend APIs that are powered by Azure functions, and they are actually managed by static web apps. And all you need to do, as I mentioned earlier, is push your code to your source control. That could be GitHub or DevOps, and the platform will actually build and globally distribute your assets and provision the infrastructure so that you don't have to worry about that. And you also get built-in authentication and routing rules, so as well as custom domains and free SSL certificates. And for every PR that you make to your repository, we also spin up a preview of your website. So you're going to get a URL where you can check out this new version of the website. If you're familiar with App Service, then you're probably familiar with deployment slots as well, and it's a bit similar to that. And you might also be wondering, like, what types of applications can run on Azure Static Web Apps? And there's several types of things several types of applications that you should, as you're building them, you should consider whether they should be hosted on static web apps or not. We've seen a lot of customers run large-scale applications. So think about your e-commerce applications. Those would run very well on static web apps. And your portfolio or blog, websites, and personal pages, they're usually one of the top choices for services like Azure Static Web Apps, as well as your internal business applications. You can run them on the platform as well.
Yeah, and for internal business applications, we support private link. So you can actually have an Azure Static Web Apps that's only available in your virtual network. So that's pretty cool.
Love it.
Yeah, and a couple of days ago, we announced that Azure Static Web Apps now supports .NET 6. And yeah, what this means is a couple of things. One is we understand how to detect and build and deploy .NET 6 Blazor WebAssembly applications, including including installing the WebAssembly workload, so that we can do things like building ahead of time compilation. So all of that is supported, and it just deploys nicely to Azure Static Web Apps. And then the other piece is that we support .NET 6 Azure Functions now. So Azure Functions a couple of days ago also announced the support of .NET 6 Azure Functions in both kind of like the execution models, both the in-process as well as isolated models for building function apps. And I think it's time for some demos. What do you think, Simona?
I cannot wait for our demo to start. It's going to be so awesome. And everyone, get your browsers. Make sure to have it ready because we're going to have some fun here.
Yeah, but I think first of all, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I hope everything will hold up. But first of all, I think we're going to try and kind of show everyone what the local development experience of a static web app looks like. And I'm going to actually have Simona join me on live share. So I'm going to do that first, and then while she's kind of connecting, we will kind of talk about the app itself. So let me grab the URL, send it securely to Simona. And as Simona is joining us, I'll kind of quickly walk through the app itself. So you can see that I have a couple of folders here, one for API and one for the client. And I can even make this even bigger. And let's look at the client first. And this is a standard Blazor application. There's some pretty standard pages in there. If we actually kind of look around in here, I have some Razor as well as some code. And the interesting part of this code is that I'm actually going to make a connection to a WebSocket. And this WebSocket is powered by a new service in Azure called Azure Web Pub Sub. And that's actually GA today. I think I just saw the announcement this morning. Super exciting. Check it out. So we're going to use a WebSocket from there and do something pretty cool. And in order for us to kind of get the URL for the WebSocket, we don't want to put a connection string into our client-side code. That's not super secure. So we have an Azure Function app to hand out not the connection string, but tokens based on the connection string. And it's actually going to be based on whether you're logged in or not. It's also going to have your user ID baked into it. So it's going to use the Azure Static Web Apps authentication to actually know who you are. So you can't pretend to be somebody else sending messages. And also, only when you're signed in will you be allowed to be sending messages at all. So, like it's a pretty simple, a C# function that is built using the .NET 6 in process model. And we're just returning a really simple response that has the URL in there. And I see that Simona has joined the session, so we might be seeing her cursor on the screen popping around. And I also want to point out that we have a shared project here as well. So it's not super fancy. I just have one class that I'm sharing between the front end and the back end. So yeah, we're able to kind of share code this way, which is pretty neat. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and run this project by pressing F5. And yesterday when we tested this, because I'm sharing the screen, I think it might run a little bit slower. So while we're kind of filling time here, while it's kind of starting up, let's kind of browse around the code a little bit as well. So yeah, so I think I also have a little bit of JavaScript in my app as well. So I'm using a couple of libraries here that help me basically connect to the camera on my laptop, as well as to kind of turn that camera, footage, I guess, into frames that are built with ASCII. So, or that display as ASCII. So it's a fun little thing. It's totally useless, but that's okay. I like useless things. And then down here you can see.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then down here you can see that I'm actually invoking one of my methods from JavaScript into my .NET app, so that every time I get a new frame, I'm actually sending that frame over to my .NET app, and then that's how my screen is updating in Blazor. So let me bring over the app here, and then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share this port with Simona. And hopefully Simona can join. And so what she's able to do is kind of like browse to localhost 4280, just like I am, but on her machine. And actually, she's able to test out the app. And I should also talk about how this app is running. So it's actually behind the scenes running in the Static Web Apps CLI. And the CLI is able to start up a local version of Static Web Apps. Oh my goodness, and there's Simona right now, already logged in. And using this using the Static Web App CLI, we can actually test out a lot of the features that only exist in the cloud, like authentication and things like that. So if I click on login, instead of actually going through and talking to GitHub or whatever, we decided to actually give you an experience where you just tell us who you are because you're just testing locally. And so you can actually really easily test, if I want it to be somebody else and see how the app reacts. I just go ahead and change the information here. When I click log in, my Blazor app just interacts with this information, and it just all works. So I can go ahead and start actually like I can show off, things like setting breakpoints as well. So if I go into here, my screen is too big, I can't scroll. Oh, there it is. So I can set a couple of breakpoints, and let me refresh it. So hopefully it'll hit at least one of them. So you can see that I'm actually hitting a breakpoint in my Blazor app. So here I can actually inspect things like I'm not Simona, but you can see that here's my information that kind of came from from the login provider. And if I kind of press play here, I should be hitting my breakpoint in my function app too. So in my function app, I can also tell that. What can I tell them? Well, it's not showing me. Oh, I think I hit it twice or something.
No,
oh,
I did.
Okay.
I played.
Okay. Yeah. So now I learned, and we should all have learned from this as well. Do not let Simona join your VS Code live share sessions. That's perfectly fine. Okay, let's go ahead and log in, or start my video. So like now I'm broadcasting my video. Simona can see me. I can see Simona. So that's pretty cool. So Simona, do you want to talk about how we typically deploy a static web app like this?
Yeah, so currently we're in VS Code, and I'm assuming that this repository is actually connected to a GitHub repository. So let's say if we wanted to make a quick change here, maybe we want to send a different message, or like we have this huge new feature that we want to publish. What we would do is we would push changes to GitHub, and you can do that directly from VS Code, or you can use your terminal as well. And then what that will do, it will trigger a GitHub action run, which will build your application and globally distribute your application. And then this will basically create a staging environment that you can share with others. So let's say Anthony and I are working with a team of UX designers, and we're working on a feature that allows us to build beautiful ASCII interpretations of our Blazor applications or faces. And our UX designer will be able to provide us feedback on the preview version of our application. And then once we are happy with that version of the application, we can merge our branch into our main branch, and that will push a change to production. And I don't know if you have your GitHub repository up, Anthony, if you want to show a bit that workflow.
I do not, but we can do that if I can find it. Going off script, which is great, which is exactly what I love. So yeah, so you can see that right before this call this morning, I was actually working on refactoring my project, which is something that I highly recommend any presenter doing right before any presentation, because what can possibly go wrong?
Did you also update your laptop and your dependencies to the latest version?
Yeah, I actually did update something, but it actually did not work. I won't share what that thing is, but I don't want to get in trouble. But that's okay. That wasn't something that was needed for this talk. But I think this is the moment that we've been kind of waiting for. We want to now, kind of share this with everybody out there. So if everyone wants to go to .netconf.anthonychu.dev, and don't worry that actually the URL is up top on the screen here, hopefully in large enough text. I know there's a bit of a delay, so it might be a little while before people show up. But what I'm hoping for is that other people will browse this site, and then they'll join this, and we'll see more and more people appear on the screen. I don't know if this is really going to work. I have not tested this for load. This is the maximum load that I've tested it so far, is myself and you, Simona. So if more people pop up on here, then we'll find out how this thing is going to perform. So yeah, so it is going to require you to log in to GitHub, but that's using static web apps built in GitHub authentication. Yeah, anything you want to add while we hopefully have people join this?
Well, you did talk about the fact that the authentication that we're using here is provided and managed by Azure Static Web Apps, and we're already seeing folks joining in. Hi, everyone. This is a .NET Conf party, and it's in ASCII.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have more and more people. I think I did this like maybe last year. I think we had about 20 people show up. So I'm trying to hopefully break that record. You can see there's 9 people streaming now. More and more people are joining. So yeah, I can also see on the YouTube stream that it's finally reaching the people that, hey, it's our friend Seth. How's Seth doing? How are you doing, Seth? As if we can talk to us, but but yeah, but this is super cool. So let's kind of recap like everything in that we've kind of seen in Azure Static Web Apps. So as we talked about, we now support the building of .NET 6 Blazor WebAssembly apps, including AOT compilation and other cool things like that, as well as .NET 6 Azure Functions application. I don't know if anyone else's laptops fans are kind of turning on now because you're streaming all this video, but mine's getting louder. So this is super cool to see. Thanks everyone for joining .NET Conf. This is so cool. I'm just gonna scroll up and down for like 30 seconds here because I like this is just wild. So we have now 66 people streaming here, and
that's like double your previous record, right?
Yeah, and more people are showing up. This is bonkers. So I'll quickly cut over to the slides because we have one more slide just to show, like where you can go to get more information. But I think we will come back to this just to see how many people we actually get to. So don't go anywhere, people. All right, so to learn more, go to aka.ms/SWA, that stands for Static Web Apps, -Blazor. And there's a tutorial there to kind of go through how you can clone a repo and deploy a full stack Blazor and .NET 6 functions application to Azure Static Web Apps. So let's see where we're at. More and more people are showing up. Wow, like this is just not stopping. I don't know what's happening. So, and my computer it's melting. I can see a hole burning into my table. But yeah, so this is Azure Static Web Apps.
Thank you, everyone. And Kendra, are you still with us?
Actually, you've got me, and I am such a fan of Blazor. Jeff Fritz here, and have we got some questions for you, Simona and Anthony? So good to talk to you because we really like Blazor. Static Web Apps, so cool. There's a bunch of folks with questions, including this one here from the .NET Core Show saying BAMStack makes them think of the old Batman TV show. All right, I like that. There's a question here from, is this Ladek asks, can we improve the SEO for BAMStack apps by some sort of pre-rendering mechanism?
So that's usually baked in to the frameworks that we use, and the fact that we're pre-rendering when we're using static site generators, we're pre-rendering all of the content so that gets deployed to your CDN, and that gives you better SEO as well.
Okay. Let me go to this question I have from Jefferson up here, saying a few months ago, couldn't create a static web app without creating Azure Functions, but I already have my Azure Functions API and just need to connect the static web app to it. Is it possible to create a static web app and bring my own Functions app to work with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a feature called Bring Your Own Function App, where if you don't want to have static web apps deploy a managed function app on your behalf, you can deploy static web apps and then link a function app to your static web apps. And then it behaves pretty much just like a function app that is managed by static web apps, except that it's your own. And some of the advantages of that is that you can kind of use any functions plan that you want to use, or if you want to use other triggers other than HTTP, all those things are supported with Bring Your Own Function app.
Awesome. Awesome. I love seeing that we can extend and take the static web app a little bit further there. Some cool stuff. In fact, we have a comment here. That was the best demo we've seen yet. Look at that. All right.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Wait.
Yeah, and I'll be back in an hour for another session, and I have to now work on something else so that we can top it.
So you can top it. Wait, hang on. Where did this come from? Kendra. Okay. Anyways, there's some other cool comments that have come in here that we want to make sure that folks see and we talk about, including, can a person create a progressive web app for a static site and make it run completely offline? In .NET 5, when using static sites, if a person was offline, it didn't work. Is this something we can do now?
Yes, I believe so. So I think we've had some folks deploy progressive web apps from static web apps. I haven't done so personally. I don't know if you have tried it, Simona.
Well, what I know is actually that the PWA builder is running on top of Azure Static Web Apps. So if you have been building progressive web apps using PWA builder and you've got inspiration for your service workers and just read content on PWA builder, just know that it streams from a static web app that's close to you.
Very cool. All right. One more comment we have here from Dan. Dan says static web apps with Blazor is a next-gen development for .NET developers. Oh, I think we love seeing that. Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate that. And I think that's all the time we have for Anthony and Simona. Thank you so much. It was great having you join us for .NET Conf. And Anthony, we'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for joining, everybody.